a 6-year-old beauty queen, a wealthy family home, and a ransom note that demanded money they could easily afford. On Christmas morning, 1996, Boulder, Colorado, became the epicenter of one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history. What happened to JonBenét Ramsey? And why, after nearly 3 decades, does her case still remain shrouded in suspicion, secrets, and unanswered questions? To the outside world, the Ramseys seemed picture-perfect. John Ramsey, a successful businessman in the tech industry, was president of Access Graphics, a company worth hundreds of millions. His wife, Patsy, was a glamorous former beauty queen who seemed to live through her daughter's pageants. Together, they had 2 children, Burke, 9 years old, and JonBenét, just 6. The family lived in a sprawling 15-room mansion in Boulder, Colorado, a quiet, affluent neighborhood where crime was nearly unheard of. To their friends and neighbors, they were the embodiment of the American dream. But beneath the surface of wealth and privilege, the Ramsey family was about to be thrust into a nightmare that would grip the nation. Christmas 1996 had been, by all accounts, a joyous one. The Ramseys attended a party at a family friend's home, exchanged gifts, and returned late to their house. JonBenét, excited from the holiday festivities, was tucked into bed by her mother, Patsy. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The Ramsey home, decorated for the holidays, was peaceful and quiet. But within just a few hours, everything would change. What began as a season of celebration would end in tragedy. At 5:52 a.m., December 26th, Patsy Ramsey awoke. She walked down the spiral staircase of the family home and froze. On the steps, she found a handwritten letter, a ransom note, nearly 3 pages long. The note claimed JonBenét had been kidnapped. It demanded $118,000 in exchange for her safe return, a strangely specific number, almost identical to John Ramsey's Christmas bonus that year. The author claimed to be part of a foreign faction and warned the Ramseys not to call the police. But almost immediately, Patsy dialed 911. Within minutes, Boulder police were on the scene. As officers entered the home, chaos unfolded. Friends of the Ramseys rushed over to provide support, filling the house with people. The note instructed the family to wait for a call from the kidnappers, but no call ever came. Hours passed. The house was not sealed off as a crime scene. Evidence was compromised. Detectives allowed friends to move freely, touching counters, wiping surfaces, cleaning dishes. The integrity of what could have been crucial forensic evidence was destroyed. In a case already filled with mystery, the investigation began with mistakes that could never be undone. By mid-afternoon, with no ransom call and no sign of forced entry, detectives asked John Ramsey to search the house himself. In the basement, behind a locked door, John made a horrifying discovery. There, wrapped in a white blanket, lay JonBenét. She had not been kidnapped. She had been killed inside her own home. From that moment on, the Ramsey case would never be the same. The question was no longer, who took JonBenét? It became, who killed her? When JonBenét's body was discovered in the basement, the Boulder Police Department suddenly found itself in the middle of a nightmare. But almost immediately, mistakes had already doomed the case. The Ramsey home had never been secured. Friends and family had wandered freely through the rooms, unintentionally contaminating evidence. Crucial areas were never photographed properly. Fingerprints were smudged, footprints trampled, and any chance of a pristine crime scene vanished before investigators could even begin. Almost instantly, suspicion turned toward the Ramseys themselves. To detectives, the ransom note looked staged. The specific amount demanded, $118,000, matched John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus. And the note's unusual length raised questions. Who writes a 3-page ransom note inside the victim's own home? Investigators began to consider what many would come to believe, that this was not a kidnapping gone wrong. It was a cover-up. The autopsy of JonBenét Ramsey revealed a chilling truth. She had been strangled with a homemade garrote constructed from a paintbrush and cord found inside the Ramsey home. She also suffered a fracture to her skull. The official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, with a blow to the head as a contributing factor. There were additional injuries suggesting possible prior abuse, though these findings remain debated to this day. What was clear? JonBenét was killed inside her own house, while her parents and brother slept upstairs. Investigators scrutinized Patsy Ramsey's behavior. She was the one who found the ransom note. She was the one who called 911. And forensic analysis suggested the note may have been written with her own pen and pad. Critics argued that her voice on a 911 call sounded rehearsed, even manipulative. Was Patsy staging a kidnapping to cover up something darker? Or was she a frantic mother whose child had just been murdered? John Ramsey's actions also raised suspicion. When asked to search the home, it was John who discovered JonBenét's body. Some detectives argued this was no coincidence. Was he guided by guilt, leading officers directly to the scene of the crime? Or was it the tragic discovery of a father searching desperately for his missing child? The ambiguity left investigators divided, and the public even more so. While suspicions swirled around the parents, some investigators quietly considered another possibility: JonBenét's 9-year-old brother, Burke. Was it possible that a fight between siblings escalated fatally? Could the parents have staged a cover-up to protect their only surviving son? Officially, Burke was never charged, and decades later, he would maintain his innocence in national interviews. But for many, his odd demeanor on television and in police tapes only deepened the mystery. Despite theories about the Ramseys, one critical piece of evidence seemed to point elsewhere. DNA found on JonBenét's underwear and clothing did not match any family member. To some, this proved an intruder had entered the home. To others, it was dismissed as contamination, the result of mishandled evidence. But one fact was certain: without a match, the case could not move forward. The DNA profile remained in the system, waiting for a future hit that still has not come. As the case faltered, the media took over. Tabloids plastered the Ramseys' faces on front pages. Cable news turned JonBenét's murder into a spectacle. The 6-year-old beauty queen in glittering pageant costumes became a symbol of innocence lost, but also the subject of sensationalism. For years, the case was less a criminal investigation and more a cultural obsession. And through it all, one truth remained: no one was ever charged with JonBenét's murder. Despite years of suspicion, the Boulder police never filed charges against John, Patsy, or Burke Ramsey. The case was riddled with mistakes, circumstantial evidence, and contradictory forensic findings. Yet public opinion was already set. Half the country believed the Ramseys were guilty, while the other half insisted an intruder was responsible. In the absence of answers, a new battleground emerged: the court of public opinion. In 1999, a Boulder County grand jury secretly convened to review the case. For months, jurors examined the evidence, including the ransom note, the DNA profile, and the parents' statements. By October, they were prepared to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse resulting in death. But District Attorney Alex Hunter refused to sign the indictment, claiming the evidence was too weak for a conviction. For years, the public never knew a grand jury had voted to charge the Ramseys. The revelation, uncovered in 2013, reignited outrage and suspicion. Had the Ramseys been protected? Or had a prosecutor simply saved the state from a failed trial? While the criminal case stalled, civil lawsuits began. The Ramseys sued multiple media outlets for defamation, arguing they were being unfairly painted as killers. Some suits were successful, forcing retractions. Others dragged on for years. The tabloids continued their feeding frenzy, and television networks turned JonBenét's murder into primetime specials. The Ramseys weren't just suspects anymore. They were celebrities trapped in a scandal they couldn't escape. Through it all, Patsy Ramsey remained defiant. She continued to proclaim her innocence in every interview, every public statement. But behind the spotlight, she was battling ovarian cancer, a fight she would ultimately lose in 2006. Patsy died without ever being charged and without ever seeing her daughter's killer brought to justice. For some, her death ended speculation. For others, it cemented her as a tragic figure, either as a grieving mother wrongly accused or a woman who took her secrets to the grave. If the Ramseys didn't kill JonBenét, then who did? Many investigators have pursued the intruder theory. The open basement window, the unidentified DNA, and the presence of an unfamiliar boot print in the home all suggested an outsider. Multiple suspects were considered: a neighbor, a drifter, even a family friend. But none were ever charged. In 2006, a schoolteacher named John Mark Carr confessed to the murder, describing lurid details of JonBenét's death. Yet his DNA did not match. His confession collapsed, dismissed as fantasy. The intruder theory remains possible, but unproven. By the 2000s, JonBenét's case had become more than an investigation. It was a cultural phenomenon. Documentaries, TV movies, endless books, and online forums dissected every detail. Amateur sleuths analyzed the ransom note, debated family photos, and scrutinized every second of the 911 call. The crime was no longer confined to Boulder, Colorado. It was now living endlessly in America's imagination. But while the case was stuck in limbo, JonBenét herself became more myth than memory. A 6-year-old girl whose death had been consumed by tabloids, lawsuits, and endless speculation. And as decades passed without answers, one haunting question remained. Would the truth ever emerge? Or would JonBenét Ramsey's murder remain America's most infamous unsolved crime? By the late 2000s, JonBenét's case had officially gone cold. Detectives retired, evidence grew stale, and yet the story refused to fade. Every few years, a new documentary or news special would spark fresh debate. The murder of a 6-year-old beauty queen was no longer just a crime. It was a mystery embedded in America's DNA, haunting both law enforcement and the public. But there was still hope. Advances in forensic science promised breakthroughs. By 2008, new testing on JonBenét's clothing revealed trace DNA belonging to an unknown male. The discovery seemed to clear the Ramseys once and for all, prompting the Boulder district attorney to formally exonerate the family. Yet even this evidence raised questions. Could the DNA have come from contamination during manufacturing? Was it really the killers, or just a misleading trace? What was meant to bring clarity only deepened the mystery. As the internet exploded, JonBenét's case found a new home online. Forums, blogs, and later social media became battleground for theories. Was the ransom note staged? Was Burke involved? Did the Ramseys know more than they admitted? Millions of amateur detectives pored over photos, documents, and timelines, each convinced they could solve the case from their keyboard. The murder of JonBenét Ramsey became one of the first true crime cases to be kept alive, not by police, but by the internet. In 2016, 2 decades after the murder, JonBenét's brother Burke Ramsey broke his silence. Appearing on national television, he defended himself against lingering suspicions. But the interviews sparked controversy. His awkward smile, his evasive answers. Critics claimed he seemed detached, even strange. Supporters argued he was simply uncomfortable being thrust back into the spotlight. Whether his appearance cleared his name or fueled suspicion depends on who you ask. But once again, the case dominated headlines. JonBenét's murder also changed the true crime genre forever. From the rise of 24-hour cable news to the boom of true crime podcasts and documentaries, her story was a turning point. It blurred the line between tragedy and entertainment, exposing how society consumes crime as spectacle. For many, JonBenét Ramsey wasn't just a victim. She became a symbol of lost innocence, of wealth and secrecy, of the hidden darkness inside the American dream. And so, the questions remain. Who wrote the ransom note? Whose DNA was found on JonBenét's clothing? Why did the Boulder police mishandle the scene so badly? Was this the work of a family member in a moment of rage, or an intruder who slipped away into the night? For every theory, there is a counter-theory. For every answer, a new question emerges. After nearly 3 decades, the murder of JonBenét Ramsey is not just unsolved, it may be unsolvable. JonBenét Ramsey was 6 years old. A daughter, a sister, a little girl who should have grown up to chase her dreams. Instead, she became the center of one of the darkest mysteries in American history. Her story is a reminder of the fragility of life, of the failures of justice, and of the endless pursuit of truth. What do you think happened that night in Boulder, Colorado? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see more deep dives into true crime's most haunting cases, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because some stories refuse to stay buried.